So I want to talk about a few items. Actually, probably I think it's four items, not a few, but four that have emerged out of the grading of the Acts 15 Bible study. None of these things are going to be new to you. These are things I've been saying all along, but given what I experienced in grading, I think it's important to kind of go back over some items as a final kind of put a bow on Acts 15 and begin to move forward to Ephesians, which is approaching fast, but it's not too late. So that's why I'm trying to get this in. So this is going to be a complement to the video I did for my car the other day about historical cultural context and literary context. We'll return to those in a minute. Some of these are really, at least one of them is very short, and it's the first one. And I can't tell you how many times I have written this statement in Bible studies. I mean, I have typed this. I should just copy and paste. Past tense for things that happened in the past. You need to use the past tense in your main idea, in your outline, in the content section where you're explaining the passage. All of those places, whenever you talk about the text, must be in past tense. This is a story, this is a text that happened and was written over 2,000 years ago. We have no place in this story. We are trying to understand a text in its own town, going back to the analogy and the grasping God's word. We are not right now at all concerned about what it means to us or what it's saying for us. So we need to remove ourselves from the text and speak of it in the past. The other thing is, related to this, is the statements about the text cannot be generalizations. They must be on the ground. So Gentiles aren't just people. They're Gentiles. You have the Pharisaic Jews. They're not just Jews. They're Pharisaic Jews. They're Jews of the Pharisees who happen to believe in the Messiah, Jesus the Messiah. Peter and certainly James, the leader of the church. It needs to be in that stuff. It's not general. It's not universal. It's concrete. It's historical. So I don't want to see anything other than the past tense. There is an important part of this too. It's not just being persnickety. We could easily, if we're not careful, and if we don't put this in the past tense to give us a sense of distance, we can end up putting meaning into the text, collapsing the distance. It's as if it was written to us. But we've said this passage, every passage, but this passage that we're looking at, it was not written to us. We were not at all thought of when these events happened and when it was written by Luke. No, But they are written for us. And that's another way of saying we've got to understand it in its own town before we can understand how it's relevant to our town. So past tense, please. Okay. The next one is on main ideas and outlines. Main ideas and outlines. There's some real work we still need to do in doing this, and doing it. In mind is actualized. Where's my pen? So the main idea is not a rehearsal of the story. I would say most of you. Yeah, I would say most of you have essentially rehearsed the story in your main idea. You'll especially if it's a longer, more sentences, means you're just summarizing the story from beginning, its middle, and its end. Some do it very briefly in a couple of sentences. Usually it's at least 3 to 5 sentences I've seen in this case. The purpose of the main idea is not the rehearsal of the story. What you're trying to do in the main idea is get at what is this about. What does it all add up to? What does it mean? Will you address the story? Yes, of course you'll address the story. You'll refer to the story, but it is not a rehearsal of the story. So I want to see this done better, because I think you can do it better. And I have written this enough times in Bible studies that by now this should be understood. Whether or not you can actualize it, I get it. You might not be able to actualize it quite yet. But there doesn't seem to be much progress, even though there's been much comment about it. So that's the first thing I want to say, and that's kind of a stern thing, you might say. It's like, do better. But on the flip side of this, I want to just illustrate how I would go about pulling out a main idea out of this text. Like, what would a main idea look like if I were to make one? And to do that, we're going to have to go back to the story and just kind of look it over quickly. So bear with me, and there's an error here. That's not. It's 5 to where are we? I think 5 to 11 maybe. It doesn't matter, but it's not. Get rid of that. So here we go. But some believers, now the introduction is the first few verses, but some believers who belong to the sect of the Pharisees, so these are Pharisaic Jesus believers, stood up and said, "It is necessary for the Gentiles to be circumcised and ordered to keep the law of Moses." So the apostles and elders, they get together. There's much debate. Peter gets up, says some things. He was the first one to tell a Gentile the story, which is recorded in Acts 10. And he saw that God made no distinction between the Gentiles and the Jews. And he says, why would we make Gentiles wear the yoke that neither our ancestors or us were able to bear? And then he goes on to say, on the contrary, we believe we will be saved through grace, through the grace of the Lord Jesus, just as they will. The whole assembly kept silence. Listened to Barnabas and Paul talk about their escapades, preaching the gospel among Gentiles. And then finally, after all this, James gets up, I suppose. I don't think he stays seated. I wasn't there, so I don't know. He replies, brothers, my brothers, listen to me. Simeon has related how God first looked favorably on the Gentiles to take from among them a people for his name. This agrees with the words of the prophets, as it is written, after this I will return and I will rebuild the dwelling of David, which has fallen from its ruins, and rebuild it. So what kind of main idea would I make up here? Well, I'm thinking about what this is really about, and it seems to me that it's about the It's about the debate around Gentiles and the Mosaic Law. Right? I mean, that's fair, right? It's a debate concerning or around the Gentiles who are coming to faith and the Mosaic Law. The debate was, there's my past tense, was settled by James's decision that the Gentiles let's see, don't need to keep the law in order to be saved. The debate around the Gentiles and the Mosaic Law. I didn't put an and there. Was settled by James's decision that the Gentiles don't need to keep the law in order to be saved. So that, and I'll real quick outlines. Please use a phrase outline instead of a sentence outline. So instead of James decided that the Gentiles should not need to be circumcised Instead, use a phrase, James's decision, for the outline point. Limit your outline to less than 5 points. 5 being the most. You'll never need to have more than 5 points. I mean, certainly not in this next Ephesians passage, but, should you ever continue to study the Bible, you should not need more than 5. And let me just kind of say this. It's counterintuitive, but the more points you have, the less work you actually did. I know it's counterintuitive, but it's like golf. The less points, the better player you are. And how do you get less shots? How do you lessen your shots in a golf game? You practice. You spend time with the game, so that when it comes to actually having to perform, to make an outline, you have you can put it in as few as is possible. Because when you're with it, the outline, or when you're with the passage, and you're with it for a while, you begin to see how things are connecting. So these two verses actually go with this verse, and so now I have this little cluster of verses, and then over here, this other verse, it seems to have something of a connection with this verse, and then you have another cluster, and these verse clusters become the outline. So you put verses together, like Acts 15, 11 through 21, for example. In this story, it's easy to see because it's a story, but in Ephesians, you're going to have to look for things that connect with each other, ideas that are closely related and can be sort of seen as a kind of a distinct little unit, and then you connect it to another little distinct unit, and that's what your outline becomes. That. And then please use references in your outline. So after your Jesus or James decision, 15, 13 through 21 in parentheses right after it. Choice of topics. I'm going to spend less time than I was thinking I would on this because of how much I spent on the main idea. But in the passage that we looked at for this Bible study, there were so many items that could have been used to do a historical cultural study that would help the passage. Like Pharisees, for example. What are Pharisees? What is their relationship to the Mosaic Law? What does it mean to keep the Mosaic Law? Does everybody understand the same thing when they say keep the Mosaic Law? I mean, is there an agreed upon understanding of what it means to keep the law? These comments or items, just the Jewish views of Gentiles. What's the Jewish view of Gentiles? Is there just one view, or is there a number of different views of on the Gentiles from a Jewish perspective? The quotation from Amos, that itself is a piece of historical cultural artifact, because he's pulling a passage from the prophets and inserting it in this discussion in the council. So he's reusing it, and so he's understanding kind of is that normal, to take verses out of the prophets and basically understand them to be speaking to the contemporary situation that's going on right now. I mean, just like we're saying, the Bible is historical, and we should understand the distance. For James, there seems to be no distance between Amos and James. It's like whatever Amos said, it's referring to this situation. So understanding, just kind of reading a commentary on the quotation, you'll learn stuff about it that would be helpful. So it's none of those things are a lot of work. The commentaries, they will provide information for you. You just have to, take a moment and think this question. Think this question. And I've said this before, but what is something I need to know about to understand more fully this passage? And then the last point here is the choice of your topics need to be relevant to the text at hand. So it's just an arbitrary task to just pick something that doesn't have anything to do with the passage. The whole point is, how do we understand the passage better? So if you pick a topic, say like the authorship of Acts, and there's no relationship to, the actual story, that's some nice information, some interesting information, perhaps helpful to for something, but it doesn't provide any help to understand the passage better. So I think just with a little thoughtfulness, what do I need to know that I don't to understand this passage better? So that's that. Can't not make some point about the literary and historical contexts. Please, I'm praying. That's not very good. That was supposed to be hands clasped together. I'm praying. Here we go. No, his knees need to be. He's wearing sackcloth and throwing ashes up in the air. Lord, please let them do the historical, cultural, and literary contexts right this time. I have trust in the Lord. I believe you can do it. You can do this. You are capable. Do it.